All right. Well, first of all, just I want to thank you for agreeing to do this. This is so much fun to do with you. Tell us about the size of your church, and the denomination that it's in, and whether it's urban, suburban, rural, community, small city. What kind of church are you guys in?
We were in a small church, Southern Baptist, in a small city outside of a larger city.
Okay. Okay. And so you said a small church. Kind of give me an idea of the number of people.
25 to 30 on a really good Sunday, I
Okay.
would say, for worship.
Okay. What do you think the challenges are for a pastor's wife in a small congregation?
Well, you know everybody, which is a good thing for sure. I consider that a blessing. But so I guess you have a closer relationship because everybody knows you, because you're not just part of one group, you're part of the entire congregation. And so my husband and I are involved in everything that goes on at church pretty much.
Okay. And how long have you been there?
26 and a half years.
26 and a half years. And how long has your husband been a pastor?
33.
And how long have you guys been married?
For almost 41 years.
41 years. Okay. What do you think are the challenges for a pastor's wife after serving for so long at one congregation? 26 and a half years would be a very long time.
I guess sometimes it's a little hard not to get discouraged because we certainly I think we have a wonderful fellowship. We have wonderful Bible teaching and preaching. So it would be nice for us to have, a lot more people coming in, and participating in that. But overall, we certainly have a wonderful fellowship. So I love these people. I love them, and they love my husband and I. And so, we like being there. We really do. It's a blessing to be there.
Okay. How many children do you have?
2 grown sons.
Are they still at home?
They are not.
Okay. And how has your role in the church affected your role as a mother and wife? And just be as honest as you want here.
Well, I mean, I think both of the churches that my husband has pastored full time, we had children. We had 1 when we went to our first church, and then 2 when we moved here. And I think, other than the obvious, if they're sick, guess who stays home? I mean, that's pretty much obvious. And, if my husband is needed, for funerals or hospital visits or whatever, then, that's just times he cannot be here. But again, since our churches have been small, both congregations were very, very good to our children, to our boys. They loved on them. So I guess, at sometimes he was gone a lot, but overall he did try very hard not to do that. So I would say he had a pretty good balance of that. So I don't think the boys ever felt like, their dad was never home because he was always at church kind of thing. I don't think they ever felt that way, and I didn't either, because church is just kind of what we do. It's just kind of what all of us did, because we have no family here. We've never lived where we had family, or never ministered where we had family. So the church has always been kind of our family.
So do you think that's a problem for some pastors and wives, that the pastor just is always gone?
I would think so. I've certainly known of some that, the pastor just didn't ever say no to anything. And so his wife was home with the children a lot. But I don't really ever remember that being a major problem for us. So we were kind of all in it together. And we've also been blessed to live very close to the churches that we've pastored. So that helps too, because you're just right there. We didn't have to do any traveling to get to, to church. We, literally across the street at our first one, and this one we're down the street, I guess you could say. So I think that helps too a little bit, because you can, come home for lunch if he needed to or whatever. And then he's had some freedom in ministry to go pick up the boys if I couldn't or whatever. So,
Okay. The First London Confession of Faith calls the church a compact and knit city. What is your role in that city as you see it?
well, I guess my first role would be whether I was a pastor's wife or not. I'm a Christian, so I'm a church member. I'm a church member, Christian first, obviously, church member second. And so whether my husband is pastor or not, it's my job to be involved in a church, a local congregation of believers, knit city, together, because it's our job as the church to witness to the world, to win the world and tell them about Jesus. So, that's probably my number one role. But then my role, I think, has always been to try to, support my husband and to help him in ministry. There are strengths that I have. We kind of balance each other out a lot. But I love people. I love being around people. I love helping people do things. It's just, I love missions and I love little kids. So those are the things that I've usually focused on. Women's ministries and then preschoolers have been always my favorite and my gifted areas, I guess.
Okay. Do you work outside the home?
I did not. Well, when our boys were young, I do now.
Okay. And how long have you done that?
Since our oldest son went to college, so that would be about 8.5 years.
Okay. How does it affect your role as a pastor's wife, working outside the home?
It makes it more difficult, I think, because I don't have the time that I used to have. I had a little more freedom, a little more free time, I guess I should say. Even with raising the boys, I still had, time that I could go to church and do things, and I kept the preschool resource room up that I was in charge of, and I don't really have the time to do that like I'd like to, because I do work a lot of hours. So that's been a little sadness for me, I guess, is that I don't have the time to do the things that I used to be able to do.
Okay. Tell me, just as you think across all the years now that you've been a pastor's wife, what's your greatest joy or your greatest joys as a pastor's wife?
One of them is just constantly, really, I know may sound trite, but is listening to my husband preach and teach, because he's very good at it. He's very studied, very learned, and it's his passion. So I still enjoy hearing him preach and teach. So that's one thing, I guess. And then I guess another is just being able to know people on such a personal level.
So do you feel like you have more access to the members of the church because you're the pastor's wife?
Yes, most definitely. We are invited to pretty much everything. Any family that would do anything at all, a birthday party, a wedding reception, just you name it, we are invited to more things than your average church member is, because out of respect. I think I always consider that an attitude of respect,
okay,
that they want their pastor to be there and his wife whenever possible, of course.
Okay.
But we've always been included in things like that.
All the things. Is that something unique, you think, to small churches?
I would think so. I've never really been in a really large church except when I was in college, and that was just obviously for 4 years, and I was a college student. So I grew up in a small church, and we've always pastored small churches. So I would assume so, because everybody. Like, there isn't anyone in our church that I don't know by name. A lot of them, I know their phone numbers. I know where they live. I know their family, their cousins, their children, or whatever it is. We just have a very close-knit group, and we had the same thing in our previous church as well. Mm-hmm. So I think really feeling like part of, that we're family is important.
What is your greatest sorrow as a pastor's wife, or sorrows?
I think when someone hurts my husband, that is not easy. And there certainly are occasions when someone says something that I know for a fact is not true. And whether it's directly directed at my husband or just directed at the church in general, people often make comments and say things that, again, I know for a fact are not true, but I can't just blurt out, well, that's a lie and that's not right or whatever. I can't. I have to be more respectful.
A little more decorum.
I have to be more. I have to do that. They don't have to, but I do.
Yeah.
As a Christian, for one thing. But so, and then I guess the other thing is when you see someone in your congregation, and again, since it's always been small for us, that you love so dearly, and you see them heading down a path that is going to end in the wrong place. That what the decisions that they're making, it's going to end badly, and you can talk to them or even not talk to them if for some reason there's not an opportunity. How it's going to end, and they just keep going, and it's like you've lost a family member because they've made decisions that will only cause them harm, and you can see it happening, but they don't. And that's very difficult because it's just because I love them, So.
A friend of mine asked me to ask this question. How difficult has it been for you to make friends?
I guess overall that has not really been a problem for me. I do know many pastors' wives who have not been blessed as I have been. Our first church, of course, we were younger, but I felt like I had people there now that I have people that I would call friends, and certainly here at our current church, we've been there again 26 and a half years. So I feel that there are definitely people there that are my friends, that I am friends with and I would do something with outside of church. But there is also the line that as a pastor's wife, I don't cross. So there might be things that are going on in the church, and no matter how close I am to these women, I'm not going to discuss that with them. I'm not going to tell them that so-and-so said such and such, and that's why they're leaving. And I just, that I can't go that far. There is a limit to what I can say, no matter how good a friend I consider some of the ladies at our church.
Okay. If you had the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with another pastor's wife, how would you encourage her?
Well, I would probably start with just kind of make sure that you know who you are and you know what God has gifted you in. Mm-hmm. And try to stay within those things. But again, in churches, sometimes you have to do things that, you didn't think you would be able to do. Try to also take time as a couple, as a family, find things that you do together that you enjoy, so that it's not always about the church, as a whole. So probably those would be two, just to kind of make sure that, you've got your relationship with the Lord is good. You focus on that, and then, that you encourage your husband. Always try to encourage him, because ministry can be very, very hard and very, very discouraging. So you would want to encourage him, and then, ask the Lord to send you maybe other ministers' wives. I will say that for the majority of our ministry, I've been a part of a ministers' wives group, and that has been such a blessing, because that's when you can say anything and everybody's in the same boat, and everybody understands what you're saying, and they understand heartache, and they understand the joys, of ministry as well. So if you could find a group like that, I would, or if you can't find one, start one, and other women will thank you forever for it, because it is wonderful. It is wonderful.
So you find friends there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And those are deep friendships, because when in all the years I've been in one, there have been off and on times when other ministers' wives have been going through just a horrible time at their church, church splits or just crisis or whatever. And we know that we can say anything, like anything at all, in our dinners, in our little meetings. and it is never going to go any further. And I know that we are prayer partners as well. We pray for each other. We love each other. We all know what it's like to be in ministry. I'll say I've been very blessed overall. We've not had, some of the ministers' wives I know have been treated so poorly, and I've never experienced that. We've always been, God has really been has blessed us. So,
is there anything you want to say specifically to the small church pastor's wife?
I would say just kind of embrace it, because, it means you do more things. When, again, the toilet stopped up, a lot of times they call my husband. Not as much anymore. We have some great trustees, but, there were times when, and you just have to, sometimes you just have to do it because, and again, not as much because you're a ministry, but because you're a Christian and you're a church member, and you should be part of the things that go on. You don't have to be called to do everything, but sometimes there are parts that you just have to be part of. You just have to help out because you just do. That's just, and you look for the blessing there. You can't resent that. I really don't. I just have to say, but overall, I'm not saying, I don't mean that in a perfect way. I just mean overall, it has to be done. So, sometimes that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And just, enjoy the fact that I think most of the time in a congregation, a small church, they love their pastor and their family, and, but I would encourage you to find somebody to be able to just really, say how you feel, because you don't want to burden your husband with that all the time. He certainly has enough to be burdened with sometimes. So that would be one of my recommendations to you.
Okay.
So.
All right. What question didn't I ask that you really want to answer?
Actually, the only thing I was sitting here thinking is, again, I'm probably in a unique situation in that my parents were both Christians, and they helped start a church. Again, this has been, 60 plus years ago, 65 years ago or so. And so I was raised in a small church, and my parents showed me how to love pastors. Every pastor we ever had, they would come to our house if they needed something. My dad was chairman of the deacons most of my life, and we were a small church, and we cleaned the church. We took turns cleaning the church, so we've done that as our family too. So it helped prepare me for being in ministry. When I was a young girl, I was raised in GAs, Acteens, Sunbeams. I was a Sunbeam. If you know what that is, I'm old. And God was very clear to me that he had ministry in mind for me. I always thought it was a missionary to some foreign country or something, but he was very clear that I was going to be in ministry somehow, and it, of course, was in the pastorate. But my parents exemplified how you support and love a pastor, so that was helpful to me to know, that to make them feel welcome and to love them. And so God has, in turn done that for us. Not that there aren't struggles and haven't been struggles, but overall he has blessed me in that way.
Do you think mentoring younger pastors' wives is an important thing for someone in your station of life to do?
Yeah. I do. I had a really good one. Our director of missions wife, when we pastored our first pastorate, was so encouraging, and she would get together with us. She had us in her home, and she prayed for us every day. I know she did. She told me she did. She had a map of our association, and she prayed every day for the wives in those churches. Well, the husbands too, but her job was to pray for the wives, and she just was so encouraging. It was a lot more of a struggle back then. Our children were very young, and my husband was in seminary, and so it was very, very difficult. But she was just an encourager, and she had been in ministry, and then her husband, of course, was director of missions at the time. So, but I would highly recommend that, because there are just some things that you simply cannot tell anyone except another minister's wife who you have a relationship with, that you can trust.
Yeah.
So, because we all experience most of the same things.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this podcast.
Thank you.